Morning, everyone. I'm just arranging my screens here.
Good morning, Carson.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hey there. Kind of dark outside.
That time of year, I usually walk my dog. I'm the early person in the house. I walk my dog.
Mhm.
I have to wear a headlamp, right? Because I walk along the road, and yeah, it's definitely that time of year again.
Is 2 weeks or is the time change? Or is it next weekend? Not this coming, but the following. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, it just always sneaks up on me anyway, so I just let it happen, right? Until they decide to somebody actually gets some momentum behind changing the thing, either for or against. I can never remember which one it is, but
I think I thought it was already like if all we need now is Congress to approve it and then we stay with the spring forward next year.
isn't that what Arizona does? Am I crazy in thinking that?
They don't change, but they're
They
on
don't
the
change.
they're right now an hour behind us. So they're like California.
Crazy. I know Lottie and I talked this weekend a little bit about your frontier time. I always thought about Arizona being a pain for airline travel and timing. I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Never been.
I've been to a few spring training games up there in Phoenix.
Nice. I got quite a few yeses this morning for those of you that are on, and I would expect quite a few people to join, so we can hopefully give it a couple of minutes here.
Yeah, we don't have very many on. There's Sarah.
Yeah. Let me relook at it. Craig said yes. Ken, Nathan, Kyle, and Pedro was tentative.
We'll just give it a few more minutes. There's Tammy logging on.
I need at least two more for a quorum.
Yeah.
You'll probably see here, Chair, I switched up the agenda just a smidge. I pulled the North Metro Commuter Survey preview up because Catherine on our staff, who I know is on the phone right now, running around doing a million things this morning, is going to run over to Westminster and help them kind of do some outreach to some of their employees this morning. So she needed to get out the door and do that. So I pushed her up in the agenda. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Maybe we can just start with that actually. Well, there's Nathan and Ken. Is that what we needed?
Yeah, that's what we needed. We got the six that we needed. So we should be good to kind of move ahead with the action items.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 26th Smart Commute meeting. We'll go ahead and start by approving the August minutes. Can I get a motion for that?
So move.
Just need a second.
Second.
Was that Sarah? I couldn't.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns? Raise your hand or wave at me. I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and accept the minutes. Let's go on to the September and October treasurers reports.
All righty, thank you, Chair. Yeah, like many of you remember, we did not have a meeting in September. We actually pushed that to kind of an early October Flex Ride tour. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So we're a couple of months behind here. So I have two treasurers reports to share with you from two periods from September and October. So the opening balance kind of on August the 1st, we always do that previous month. That's always how we've always done our books here for reconciliation, just as a reminder. We opened at a really healthy balance of almost $55,000 back on August the 1st. We had kind of a measly $8,600 in deposits, pretty normal, but not anything spectacular. We had quite a few things hanging out at that time. They're not outstanding anymore. You'll see that in the next invoice. But at that time, we only received $8,680 in deposits, whereas our debits were quite a bit higher that month. We had a decent sized salary chunk that month. Catherine worked a little bit of extra. If you remember, she's contract for us, and some months she works a little bit more, some months a little bit less. So this was one of the higher months on that end. Some outstanding charges here, just to note, that are a little bit different than normal. We had some antivirus software that we pay for, $129 a year, not too bad. Let's see what else was different on there. The pins and business cards, we paid $205 from Vistaprint to get a lot of business cards, I think 500 business cards, and then a number, 200, 250 pins, just kind of basic white pins with our logo on them. I'd love to get them to everybody. I know I brought some to the board meeting, or the Flex Ride tour, excuse me, in earlier this month, but I'd love to get those out at some point when we're all able to get back together, so you can each have a few. Our ending balance after all that month was down to $25,589.40. But as you can see, as of this morning, our current checking balance is just over $50,000, and our current savings balance is a healthy $74,110. If you remember from our August meeting, a lot of that savings balance, it looks very healthy, but a lot of it is for local match for kind of the e-bike Flex Ride grant. So I hesitate to even call that savings, right? It's just a placeholder for where that money will be going once we have to pay our local match on those two accounts. Our outstanding invoices currently, and this is the same on this month's treasurer's report as well as the next one, is $17,288. This is not too bad. This is pretty typical for us, right around that $15,000, $20,000 range in terms of outstanding invoices. A few Flex Ride invoices, we're not 100% sure what that might look like as we're coming up on the time for us to start paying back to RTD for local match, how they want to handle that, if they're going to continue to pay us and then have us turn around and pay them back, or if they're going to credit us kind of this money toward our local match. Not 100% sure how that will work out, but I think that might be why those are hanging out a little bit right now. And then we got paid for our RTD, or we have our RTD marketing invoice Q3, which is out there. We just turned that in, and we're looking toward Q4 with a few new ideas to eat up all that $15,000 left in that grant. And then we got paid for one of our CMAQ invoices. Let's see. This is October. This one's a little bit heavier here. This is for the month of September, so the 1st through the 30th. Our opening balance, as it was at the end of the previous month, is about $25,000. We received a lot of deposits this month. A few things to note here. It's $56,000, almost $57,000 worth of deposits, which is a lot more than normal. Oops, excuse me. 6,250 of that was from CCAA, excuse me, for the 4CA. This is actually a payment from the Colorado Community Action Association for our e-bike, kind of a augmented payment for that program. They essentially help cover a lot of the augmented costs for that program, accessories, kind of gift cards for incentives, things like that, for our second round of e-bikes. So this $6,250 is essentially set aside with that kind of color of money for the e-bike program. So don't think about that as something that we can use in our own kind of payments, but we did receive payments back for a lot of our kind of grants that are out there, right? RTD Flex Ride July, CMAC July, Flex Ride June, our final TMO support grant, which was a large sum of money, $16,864. That was the wrap up from our website and bike kind of grant process back when CDOT gave us that $60,000. Toward the end of that grant, we were able to use up all but about $1,000 of that $60,000, which is really great considering we started a little bit late. I think we got a pretty good product for our money there. More CMAC, July and June. I'll talk about this in just a second, and then CMAC for August. This July payment, you may see it duplicated here. The reason for that is because CDOT duplicatively covered or paid us. They made a mistake and paid us twice for one of these months and lumped those payments in together into this $8,000 number. So I've informed them of that. I didn't catch it because they had lumped the payments in together before this, but I'm sure there'll be some kind of a holdback on the next kind of cycle for our CMAC grant because they double paid us for one of these months. I know it looks a little bit funny with the duplicative Julys in there, but that's because CDOT made a mistake. That's a lot of deposits. Are there any questions on that side before I move?
Any questions? I don't see anybody's hand up or anything.
All right. That's a bit of a strange one for us, that big deposits month. And then our debits were pretty typical, right? Salaries right around that $13,000 to $15,000 range. We have to pay kind of a specialty products insurance. It's because we're a small nonprofit. That's $213 a quarter. We paid for some e-bike gift card incentives. This was for people to be a part of a panel at the back end of our phase one. It was, $15, $20 a piece for these kind of across time. They were incentive-based gift cards, nothing too crazy, but that totaled $423, and it got people to show up to give some feedback at this panel. We think it was well worth the dollars. And again, the dollars for that 423 came from our phase one payment from CCAA. So this was not coming out of our traditional operating budget. This was already accounted for, but it eventually did come out of our budget. So our ending balance at the end of September was $62,548.70. Really, really healthy for Smart Commute, especially this time of year. And our current checking balance is right around that $51,000 range. Like I said before, and current savings is still $74,110. I won't go over the outstanding invoices again because that's a current thing, and I discussed it kind of in the previous treasurer's report. But I'll look for a motion or questions about either one of these.
Questions? Not seeing any. Can we get a motion
Move
to
to
accept the
approve.
September and October? Thanks,
Second.
Jean.
So Waddy,
Perfect. Yep.
Yep.
And if there aren't any concerns or questions, we'll go ahead and accept those. Kyle, I see you on
Perfect.
your camera. Did you have a question?
I was just gonna say aye.
Perfect. All right.
Um,
Is this where you moved up, Catherine? I don't see it on the screen. I just have mine. Okay,
no,
not
that's
yet.
I was going to discuss this briefly, Chair, just kind of a teaser for our executive board discussion, if that's okay.
Sure, go for it.
So here's our 2022 board. Obviously, Chair Jessica Sangren, Vice Chair Waddy Burgos, and Treasurer Gene Putman. As we move into 2023, I guess I would open discussion either in this forum or privately with me about kind of what we're looking for in 2023. If you're still interested in serving in these roles, we would love to have you. I'd love to have you. It's been a great year. And I'd look to be more in person next year. And then if there's interest in kind of dropping off and having someone else step up, we're also open to that. But in December, just know that we will have to have a vote kind of for the board chair, whether the slate stays the same or it changes up a little bit.
Any thoughts? Anybody want to step up?
I think we pried Waddy last year.
That's right. We had an awkward long silence, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
I'm happy to stay with the same situation that we have now. I think it's been working. So any opposition to that? If not, we'll just wait until December and vote on it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Thank
Preston, if
goodness, because
Nathan-
nobody else's hand is up. Hey, there's Nathan. Are you volunteering yourself?
No, I'm just saying for newbies like myself, it may be helpful just to get maybe a quick primer on sort of like responsibilities, time commitments, that sort of thing for executive officers.
Yeah,
Okay.
good question. I think maybe Chair, if you want to start, take a stab at it, I'll add anything here at the end.
Yeah, it's a very little commitment, to be honest with you, Nathan. The chair runs the meeting, and that's literally the extent of my commitment. I look at the agenda prior to the actual meeting. If I'm not here, then Waddy or whoever is the vice chair steps in. And then Jean, I'm not sure what your role is, and maybe you can share with us. You've been the treasurer for a while?
I'm willing to stay on. It's important for this group to have a good, sound financial base to live on. And having started this group with an application for federal funds, I'm very into having this group succeed and provide services to the community.
And so
But if
Carson, maybe
somebody else would like to do it, that's fine.
maybe you can send out just a general role and responsibility thing before the December meeting so people can take a look. And then if there is anyone that wants to move forward in their position on the board, we can have a better understanding of what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. I think really great question, Nathan. Pretty kind of omitted that on my part here. Apologies for that, but it's like Chair said, it's pretty straightforward, not a ton of time commitment, nothing kind of off the books time-wise, unless something kind of crazy is going on. I would just look for direction in meetings. And I think part of Jean's role as treasurer is to kind of look over the treasurer's reports as I send them out, make sure nothing is super out of whack, and call me on that if it is. Before I kind of give those at each meeting. But yeah, I'll send around. I know I have a document from last year, kind of organizing those roles. Just if we have interest, I'd love to have interest from others. Yeah, it's always good to move people around.
And I don't know if my role also as chair is to represent Smart Commute at NADA. Is that part of my role? Yeah.
It
So that's
is
another meeting.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning, we have that at 7:30. But yeah, we'll look for those. You can send them out before the December meeting anytime. That's probably fine. I might be calling you, Nathan, just so you know. I see you shaking your head, but you asked a question.
He sounds very interested.
This was purely to advance the conversation.
Yep. All right. Let's keep going. We'll move on to the North Metro Commuter Survey with Catherine.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right. I had some problems joining my computer and my phone, so I'm video on phone, and then I'm going to be sharing my screen on my computer. Our North Metro Commuter Survey is an annual process that we go through. This is the 5th year that we'll be doing this survey, which gives us the exciting opportunity of doing some longitudinal data in our regional report. We usually focus on September data collection. And the reason that we've always done it this way is to really be in line with the regional survey efforts because those take place in September. But we have one employer that can't participate in September and has to always participate in October. So we run the survey in October kind of on the quiet side And we had a few employers this year who missed the September window just due to illness or other things going on. So we have actually 4 employers that are participating in the October survey. So we still have a lot of data coming in. As of last night, combining the responses that we had in September with the responses that we've had so far in October, we have a little over 2,100 responses. So last year we had a little over 2,300. So maybe we'll make up the last 200 in the last few days. You can see some incredible data collection happen with a few reminders to employees, but pretty good number. We have 6 jurisdictions that are participating with the survey. So they'll receive both an employer report as employers to employees, and they'll also receive a jurisdictional report, which we feel is important for us to support the jurisdictional goals, especially those goals that relate to multimodal, bike and ped, you know, those type of, there's one that's just slipping my mind, mobility planning. So we like to support those efforts with these reports. We have 15 employers total participating, and I wanted to do a preview of what one of our reports is going to allow. And Carson, for some reason, it's not letting me share my screen even though I'm a co-host. I don't know if there's something I need to turn on my end.
Yeah, maybe. Let me make your second account a co-host and stop sharing, Kit.
Okay, sorry. I forgot I was also joining on a computer that doesn't have a camera, which gets to be a little crazy. All right, let me try this again. All right, good. Sorry. Okay. Well, it looks like this has decided to reload for some reason. So this is going to be an example of one of our employer reports. Some of the data that cites regional sources is going to be out of date. There we go. Or won't be completely accurate, not out of date, because it is the September data set and it doesn't yet incorporate the October data set as well. But this is going to essentially be what we give to our employers. So I'm using North Metro Community Services as an example. They're an employer to about 200 employees. They're on Westminster, kind of near Pecos and 122nd, pretty close to where our office used to be when we were with Ace Rep. And they had reasonably good participation. They help support people who have developmental disabilities. So they're a really great employer. So for their results, we continued to analyze kind of mode split, mode share, including non-commute days. And that becomes really important when we look at someone like North Metro Community Services, because I'm going to skip the SOV and non-SOV breakdown for a moment, and I'm going to go straight to these non-commute days. When you think about days that are not spent on trips, there's 2 categories. One is compressed work week. So it's an employer that has a policy that allows you to work a full week in less days. So for instance, 4/10s, 9/8s, that kind of schedule. And then there's general leave, which would be like PTO, weekends, vacation days. So these start to actually show some rather significant impacts when you start collecting that data. And we want to continue visualizing that data because for North Metro Community Services, they have a compressed work week policy, and it's resulting in 10% of their mode split being diverted from a commute to work to someone being able to stay home. And that has a rather profound impact. Looking at the rest of their mode split, we look at SOV, which is single occupancy vehicle, someone driving alone in their car, as kind of its own category. So they have a 31% mode split right there. And then we also look at non-SOV. So for them, they have a little bit of biking, a little bit of carpooling, they have no transit usage, and they have a rather significant amount of teleworking happening, 1/5 of their trips are by teleworking, so they're not really trips at all, but they are still clocking in for the workday, and they have no walking behavior. Now, if we look at that across kind of the conventional pie chart, you can start seeing how this is visualized. So there's that SOV travel, all of these bike, carpool, telework, these are all non-SOV behaviors. So it makes up a large chunk of this pie, but a very substantial amount is the day off that we have diverted. So we've got 32%, almost a third of trips that are just normal days off. And that might account for some compressed work week that people just miscategorized when they were filling out the survey. And then we also have 10% compressed work week. So that results in 43% of their mode share being trips that are not taken at all. This is one of the largest for any of the employers that we work with. If you start to think about mathematically, what is a day off? Weekends are typically going to be days off. So 2/7 results in about 28% days off. So if you see an employer that's just giving weekends off only and has no sick or PTO leave, you're going to see this normal day off be closer to 28.5%. They show 32%, which is quite a lot larger. So that means, again, either people are miscategorizing compressed work week days off, or they have a really good PTO plan. And that is something that we should account for. That's an employer's choice, and it does result in positive externalities to the rest of the community when people commute that way. Now, when we start thinking about commute distance, that's another data point that we collect. You can start seeing for people that are reporting mostly drive alone trips, mostly SOV trips, that average commute for their workplace is 9 miles. That's about 3.5 miles less than our average commute distance. So people are locating close to this employer. And that to me usually means they have rather good retention. If you see a shorter than average commute distance, we have some bike commuting at 5 miles. That's pretty typical. Carpoolers are coming a longer way, which makes sense with the gas prices. That average distance is 20 miles. So people are finding a reason to get into another person's car and split that cost. Transit and walk are not happening, but the telework miles avoided is 10 miles. So every time someone logs into telework, they're not driving 10 miles to work, which is a net 20 miles a day. So that makes a pretty big impact as well. Now, this year, we really started to focus on the costs of commuting and commuting, as a sustainability issue. So for all of our employers that participated, we generated a very, very basic commute footprint. So the commute footprint has to rely on very base assumptions. And when we do an actual commute footprint with an employer, we work with them to determine the actual assumptions that we need to make in order to generate the correct data. But looking at their commute footprint, even with all the compressed work week and the telework days, they're still, as an employer, emitting 66 tons of CO2 annually. They're burning through 6,000 gallons of gas, and that's costing employees about $25,000. I wanted to point out we have little snippets from the regional results here. And this isn't going to be accurate data right now for the regional results, but for our September data set, we had 4% of all regional respondents were driving a ZEV, which would be a zero emitting vehicle or a traditional 100% EV like a Tesla. And only 1% of regional respondents were carpooling. So if you look back here at the mode split for carpool, for North Metro Community Services, they have 2%, a little over 2% of their trips were by carpooling. So they're carpooling at a higher rate than the average. And we like to point this out because a lot of times people think if they buy a Tesla, they've solved the commute problem and all of the negative externalities related to commuting. And that isn't necessarily the case. And we want to challenge people to still make better, more sustainable decisions as much as possible, and as much as they have the opportunity. However, everyone has variables that impact their particular commute. And that's something we also like to talk about. So if someone is responsible for transporting children, it's going to be very difficult for them to use any other commute option aside from maybe teleworking. So we like to provide some unique stats for each employer. So 26% of the workforce at North Metro Community Services that participated in our survey, they have to transport children. That's a little higher than average. Average is about 20% is what we see. Their average commute distance, so that's for all modes, is 10 miles. And that's because those carpoolers are carpooling, and that's reducing the SOV average. So the average is 10 miles. Their longest commuter comes 37 miles away. And they have 30% of their workforce working a compressed work week schedule. So that's rather significant. And
Gene, is
we
that,
want,
I'm
that
sorry,
what?
Gene, is that a hand?
Oh yeah, and I can't
Yes.
see anything right now, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, Gene, ask your question if you have one.
Yes, my question is, with the high gas prices that we had in the last year, is there any effect on your numbers due to that?
If we're talking about the commute footprint, the amount of gas is from the Denver metro average for the last year. So that's where this number is coming from, is fuel expenses and exclusively. I haven't necessarily seen that gas prices are influencing people to choose other options. We aren't going to know our regional results until next Monday, but we're still seeing in the regional results an increase in SOV over last year, and a corresponding decrease in teleworking. We're seeing increases, very slight. We're seeing increases in transit, in carpooling and biking over last year as well, but there is a net increase of SOV. So I think it's going back to the normal. It's still lower than 2019. That was our last number before COVID. 2019, we had an average regional mode split just under 90%. It was like 89 or 88.7, if I recall. So we're seeing right now with our regional data set and regional SOV rate, and this is again, removing those days off from the equation, we're seeing 78% in our most recent regional data, and it's incomplete. And last year I wanted to say that we were at like 65% SOV or something like that. So we're seeing that as people reduce their teleworking, they're increasing their SOV trips. And that's, I think, to be expected. It's still less than it was before COVID, which is the good news. But I'm not seeing like a reduced SOV because of gas prices. And we didn't ask people why they might be taking the commute that they're taking or making the commute choice that they're making. That might be an interesting data set to collect in future years. So we don't actually have the data. Fuel prices are influencing anyone's decision making when it comes to their commute choice, but I would presume it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, we wanted to talk about the negative externalities of commuting because it is something that is important in our work. So we covered that with like all of the costs of the commute, and we wanted to take some time looking at sustainable commuting and there being interest in other commute choices. So we asked people when they responded to the survey what they would be interested in learning more about. So for this particular employer, there's a lot of interest still in teleworking. There's interest in carpooling, actually, and then continued interest in compressed work week. There's not very much interest in walking, a little bit of interest in biking and riding transit. But we like to say, there is interest in commute choices, and that even a once a week swap for an SOV trip makes a huge difference. So we like to make the case, start setting up the case for us to engage with an employer in the coming year around trying to educate employees and bring employee programs. Another question that we ask is about whether employees know someone to ask at work if they have a question about commuting. So say they aren't sure what transit route to take, or They don't know if there's a carpool database. They don't know which bike route. Is there someone at their office that can answer their question? So for this employer, 60% of their respondents said they don't know who to ask. And that's also important for what we end up suggesting and recommending to an employer at the end. I'm going to take a quick little detour here to this is another regional snippet that's a little out of date, but it showed that in at least the September data set, 71% of the people in the regional data set knew about that Zero Fare Better Air campaign. So that's a strong majority, I'd say. However, and it was interesting to see that anyone that was unaware of that Zero Fare program, they didn't report any transit trips. So, you know, trying to get more awareness around that campaign, not that it's exactly correlated that way, but that's part of the goal for future years as we hope that this campaign is going to be more annualized out of RTD. All right, we always have quotes because we ask for open-ended we ask some open-ended questions, and that's really important to our process. So we always take time to summarize positive quotes and critical quotes. So for this employer, they have quite a few positive quotes related to their teleworking program. That, you know, people are very happy that they have that work from home program. And then we have someone that's just saying that they bought a house closer to work to limit their commute. And we see that actually in the data that they have a shorter SOV on average and a shorter commute distance on average. That means that people are really dedicated to this employer and they're going to make the decision to locate closer to that employer. Now, we also like to capture critical thoughts. So there weren't many offered for this employer, but one person suggested that incentives be offered from the employer level for biking or carpooling. And this person brought up incentives as well, that there's incentives to be fit at their employer, but there's not incentives to maybe bike to work. And this person's kind of suggesting maybe we could tie those together. And I don't fix anything if there's a misspelling or anything in these quotes. So I take it verbatim from employees and just put quotes. And if there's anything that would be personally identifying, I do anonymize that when I provide these quotes. We didn't have any of those type of quotes in this particular report as an example. And then where we end our report is with a roadmap for the year ahead. So for each employer, this is unique and this is driven by the data that we saw. So you can see here, these are the next steps that we want to explore in 2023. The first thing that we want to explore is establishing an employee transportation coordinator. And what that is it's a point of contact at this business that they can let employees know, hey, if anyone has questions about carpooling, about transit, about biking, please talk to me. And we can actually back that person up. So we tell them, you don't need to find someone that's an expert in this stuff already. You just need to find someone that knows our email address so that they can forward questions to us and we can provide a response for them. So it's really easy to establish an employee transportation coordinator or ETC program at an employer. It's just something that they have to be intentional about. And we think that this would be beneficial for North Metro Community Services to really consider. And it's a very easy initial step. And the second step that we're suggesting is just generalized commuter education, because people are interested in a variety of commute options. We think just generalized commuter education, like coming on site with a presentation, doing a table, providing copy for their internal emails, that kind of thing would be helpful to them. And then we also end with just some kind of statistical information about the data set that we collected. So we collected 53 responses from 200 employees, assuming that all employees had an equal chance to take the survey, which we have to make that assumption in order to generate a margin of error. We have a margin of error of just a little over 11% at a 95% confidence interval. So we would have liked to have had more responses to have a tighter margin of error. And we like to be clear about this, but we still think that the results are going to be reflective generally of the employee population, and that you can take some general steps forward like we're recommending, even with that level of margin of error. So that's kind of the end of my explanation. And I wanted to show the full report So when we do our meetings with employers, we're going to go through the presentation like I did on the screen, but we're also going to provide a printed presentation or a printed report, in which case it would look more like an actual page. So these three tiles would be together. These three tiles would be together. And then these three tiles would be together. So it would result in a 3-page report. So I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has any.
I'll just quickly jump in, Catherine, and just say, I think for the board is a 30,000 foot level here. We've been doing this for a number of years, and Catherine has put a lot of work into kind of how we craft this report for employers. I see this as a keystone project for us here at Smart Commute, right? We're taking commuting data and looking at TDM strategies based directly off that data. This is kind of the pinnacle of how TDM can work, in my opinion. So this year with our new rebrand, we put a lot of time into kind of telling a story through the data, and then ending with a roadmap for employers that's really straightforward. I know there's a lot of text on the page and a lot of numbers, but we think through this process, we can be able to walk people through it and see kind of a roadmap to potential TDM solutions in the future. So I just caveat it with that kind of point, and obviously we'll take questions. I know we took some time there, but I promise I won't run us over 9 o'clock. Is that a
Any
hand, Jean?
questions?
I have a question.
You-
I was wondering if you guys had plans to put together any sort of social media toolkit. I think it would be really great to be able to share this on our LinkedIn page for AC Rep, or just different ways to give it more visibility.
Yes, Catherine can add in here, but I think once we get the regional results, Sarah, right? So we have September and October, we need to wait for all those numbers to come in, then we can compile it into kind of a regional result. It looks a little bit different than this kind of employer specific results you saw today. There's some trend lines across a few years included in the regional result that I think are even more interesting. But yeah, so once we get that put together, we'll be sending it around to the partners with kind of basic social media toolkit, nothing too fancy. But yeah, it's a really good idea. And thanks for bringing it up.
And then Jean, you had your hand up as well.
Yes. This is very, I want to compliment you on the visual aspect of your report. We as a people have become very visual and a lot of times don't read a lot, but your report visually is very is excellent in its presentation.
Thanks. Yeah, we recognize people don't like to read either, so we're trying to make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. And we're planning to present this, of course, to our employers, but we also want it to be something they can just receive in their hand and they can follow it through. Like Carson said, as a story that kind of leads you on a journey to a conclusion that will be discernible even if we're not presenting it. So thank you. And I can stop, if there's no other questions, I'll stop sharing, Carson, so you can take back over.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I think I'll bring the regional results to the board in December, right? I'm not going to do a full rundown. I may highlight a couple of things here, but we really want to take this opportunity to walk you through. We put a lot of effort into this and thought it was worth kind of walking the whole board through. I know it took some time, but thanks for hanging with us and the good questions.
I think I just want to point out one thing that was alarming in there was the 0% of transit, and also the 26% have to drive their kids. I think that's another conversation piece if the legislation tries to pass something similar to what they did before. When there aren't any options for transit, and then you have a 25% of your workforce has to drive their kids, and there isn't an option, making sure we don't penalize those employers and those parents.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Chair. And I think we at the regional level, I won't speak to the numbers, but transit's not high, right? And I think that's indicative of service levels in our area and a suburban community that doesn't necessarily have first and last mile connections. I think we all know this. I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah, I think the numbers have played that out. Kyle, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to echo Gene's comments. Great job on the report. This is super helpful. And you had mentioned, I think that you're working with some of the same companies year over year. Are you able to get the data at a granular level to find out, has there been action or improvement from a split perspective with the companies that you've been monitoring over the course of however many years?
Catherine?
Yeah, I can say we do have some participating companies that have gone through this with us. I think even all 5 years. We have some that have gone kind of off and on. So we do have that granular data. But I can tell you, it's hard because of COVID to know what the granular, year after year has been for our impact. And so it makes it really tough to start teasing out, what have we been able to accomplish versus what COVID accomplished for us. And especially with the increasing SOV coming out of COVID, we, I think, haven't stabilized yet. But yeah, we can actually show comparisons from year to year, and we have some employers that are particularly interested in that data, and we can talk about with them to make sure that they're seeing progress. But yeah, COVID really destroyed a lot of our being able to see incremental progress, because the recovery from COVID has overwhelmed or overtaken kind of the incremental change that we end up having an impact in and an influence in.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Nathan?
For some reason, my hand emoji isn't working, but I just want to echo, this is really, really great, Catherine. And, first time really going through the information on my own, just the level of analysis and the detail and the time and the effort and the volume, just huge kudos to the Smart Commute team for all of this. Equally so, I think very helpful for employers. I think employers are obviously in a very difficult spot these days, managing how to best provide telework, how to best provide commuting options. It's just a strange era. I'm wondering how, does this presentation is equally helpful for employers, but do policymakers and those that provide transit, does this help shape some sort of policy decisions as well? One thing that has been interesting to me is the approach that Gen Z has to work, right? And as Gen Z comes into the workforce, there was an article just the other day from the Denver Business Journal how Gen Z really loves working from home, and they've done it, almost their entire careers of 2 to 3 years. But they also want some place where they can go to in person and have some interaction, and have some office, and how are transit behaviors and commutes sort of reacting to that shift in the workplace demand. I think remote work will always be here, but the compressed schedule is very interesting to me. And how is transit, how are commuting options adapting to the new society of a compressed schedule and telework, et cetera. So very interesting for employers. I would just, it'd be interesting to have in our back pocket how policymakers take this decision as well, and adapt service, increase service, decrease service, provide options, et cetera. So, but really, really great job, Catherine and Carson and everyone.
And I see Wadey's got comments in there. I don't know if he's just sharing. He's also great work. Data and final report can really help.
Chair, I just jump in and say to Nathan's comments here, and Catherine, you can add if I miss anything here, right? But a lot of the employers that we work with are jurisdictions. And our reporting for, the city of Longmont, the city of Thornton, city and county of Broomfield, Westminster, different folks were able to look at kind of their transit mobility, whatever transportation plan they have that's on their shelf, and apply some of these practices that we're recommending in terms of TDM strategy directly to policy points in their plans, and advocate for improved services in those areas, both to their employees at the jurisdiction level, but we're also able to offer them kind of recommendations based on geocoding of the data for kind of commuters coming to and from that area, right? So we have that information as well. So it's two different reports. Both of them address the policy pieces thrown out kind of in those planning effort documents. Catherine, am I missing anything there? I think that's kind of the gist of it.
No, I think that's good to mention. And we usually do our jurisdictional reports. And we have those for January because it takes a little bit more time to do those because there's another data set that we incorporate into those that we don't have for the employer reports. But certainly some of our most involved employers are our jurisdictions, and they're the ones that really pay attention to those employee reports. We have some private employers as well that pay attention to how the bar moves from year to year. And we do try to craft our jurisdictional reports to be cognizant of policy and the impacts of policy. And I think that we're going to be excited to show our kind of more regional jurisdiction angled report, which is a little different than this report. It's going to be a couple pages longer, but I think it's going to help frame the issue and how policymakers can have a role trying to help us move the needle, because nothing will make, no program that we have will ever have the same impact as infrastructure will. So we try to get people to use the infrastructure that exists, whether it's good or bad. But if we build new infrastructure, it has an enormous change. And that includes infrastructure like access to services, like our Flex Ride program at 144th.
Great information, Catherine. I know Thornton is finishing their survey up right now so that they can do the comparison. So it'll be interesting to hear how those results turned out probably in January, I guess. Well, I don't see anybody else waving their hand around, so we'll keep moving.
Thanks, Chair. I know we're short on time, so I'm just going to really quickly run through these last few points, and I promise I won't keep you past 9. These will not be nearly as in-depth as kind of Catherine's walk through the commuter survey. I just wanted to quickly highlight kind of our Flex Ride tour and just thank you to those of you who were able to join us both kind of for lunch. I know you had to peel off there, Kyle. The selfie's pretty funny. I know Sarah's not quite ready for the camera. Waddy's looking down. I just thought it was funny. Here we weren't quite all ready for the selfie, but I did not post that publicly. And there's this one here. I just want to thank Sarah for putting that on LinkedIn as well. I saw that, and we thank you for the kind of press we get there. So this was really great. We'll plan on kind of more Flex Ride information in the future as we get ready for kind of the last year of service and really pushing RTD on what they're going to do next. So that's kind of the next step part in the agenda I wanted to hit on really quickly. More to come on that. The second annual CDOT and Rocky Mountain Act TDM conference, the longest name of all time. I am a board member of the Rocky Mountain chapter for the Association of Commuter Transportation. It's our professional development group across the country, and actually, I guess globally now, for transportation demand management. This conference, we're playing a pretty active role. I'm on the conference planning committee, and I'm speaking on a panel called Beyond the Bounds, discussing TMO intercollaboration across regions, and kind of how we work with folks kind of in different TMOs in different spaces with different focuses, and how we create programming that works kind of all across the metro, while each retaining our own individual kind of flavor, so to speak, as a TMO. And then Jean on our staff is going to give a presentation on the 144th Flex Ride and e-bike mobility kind of package as a part of another panel. Just happy to be involved with this, looking forward to it. It's at CDOT headquarters on November the 4th. They're actually sold out with quite a long waiting list now. CDOT was not able to procure the budget to get a larger space, so we're hoping to have proof of concept for a larger conference next year, to be honest. Yeah, just want to draw attention to ourselves there just a little bit. Wadi, I want to retake. Yeah, we'll do another one sometime. This is our last point, and I know there might be a question here, so I'm just kind of running through it, Chair. E-bike Phase 2 program update. I know we've all been waiting for this for a long time. Jean and I have, certainly. We're working through the very final insurance points with RTD. They wanted to be listed versus insured on our policy. We've worked it out on the back end as of last night. Sounds like we're going to be good to go. No policy issues there. It won't increase our premiums or anything, but they need to be listed on our policy. which is kind of foreign to us, me and Gene. So we've been working through that for the last couple of weeks. But I think we're really close there. The CCAA funding is there to augment, like I said before, this pays for kind of the deposits for a lot of people that can't quite pay that $250 deposit, as well as a lot of the kind of augmented things as we launch into a terrible time of year to bike. And we realize that this will pay for things like baklavas and gloves and different items that allow people to bike in winter when it's possible and safe. We're going to go to RFQ immediately following this contract execution. I just got an email from Jean this morning. She's an early morning person at about 6:30 saying she expects a response from RTV today based on conversations last night. So as soon as that goes live and we execute the final contract, we'll be in RFQ for 1 week. It's a short period. We want it to be short on purpose so that we can get bikes on the streets as fast as possible. All the bike shops in the North Metro are ready to go. We have 8 participants waiting to join in the program. We actually had 11 at one point, but 3 people actually dropped out while they've been waiting because we've been waiting on RTD for this contract to be executed for so long. It's been months and months of kind of waiting through the contracting period. I just wanted to point that out. I know it's not a great thing, but I think it's just part of the honest conversation we have when we're talking about a small deal like this. When you get people to kind of report their data before they have a bike, which is what these individuals are doing, then they end up dropping out after a certain period of time and wondering if the program is even real. But we do have 8 participants that are ready to go as soon as that RFQ gets done and we have bikes on the street. So I'm happy to take questions on this. I know this is kind of the last kind of meatier agenda item, but we're getting a lot closer here.
Any questions? I don't see anybody's hand up.
Good. I've answered enough insurance questions in the last week for a lifetime, I feel like. So I guess the last thing is this field trip, right? We were, as we finished the flex ride, we said, let's do this again. This was fun. Get out and do lunch, and maybe the next thing will be a bike, or if you have an e-bike ride. I thought a little bit about it. We're running into some bad weather, right? It's supposed to snow tomorrow morning. So let's push this to next spring. And I think a goal of mine for next year is to kind of have maybe 1 outing a quarter. And then if we need to meet virtually in between, just so that everybody doesn't have to come up here and go to meetings all the time. I think that might be a good balance. I'm happy to talk to you, Chair, about that a little bit, but that's kind of a goal of mine next year, is to get us out and do something different every quarter in the region, whether it's a field trip or a bike ride or what it is. But always looking for suggestions on that bike ride, what it might look like, what we might do. But yeah, look for that kind of next spring, I think.
I love that idea. I love that we can actually see how our programs are working or what's not working. So I think this is a great way to do that. Any last thoughts from anybody before we head out for the day? Nope, I don't see anything. Oh, Nathan, you took your mute off.
Oh, no. I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. It's been a nice morning again, and we'll look forward to December, right? There's no meeting in November.
Yeah, December 14th, a little earlier, right? We usually push it a week earlier just because of the kind of Christmas holiday. I'll send out an invite along with the kind of board information, the responsibility board information here by the end of the week, just so we all have it on calendars leading up into the holiday time. I know it can be a little bit lighter meeting. I'll try to keep the agenda pretty light.
Okay. Well, have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. We'll see you in December.
Yep.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Well,
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.